Hello everyone and welcome back to Trackside Talk, your weekly source for all things motorsport. I'm your host Kelly and we have a lot to unpack today. We had a great race in Alabama at Barber Motorsports Park. We had a great race at Martinsville. We had a race in Suzuka. And we had a great race at COTA, Circuit of the Americas, COTA, with MotoGP. But first, before we dive into all of that, we do need to talk about the new regulations for this season and what happened in Suzuka that is making everyone livid. Alright, you might be wondering, Kelly, what really happened in Suzuka? Why is everyone up in arms? Well, Ollie Behrman, who is a driver for Haas, he is also a second-year driver. He suffered through a 50G crash. Now, what does 50G crash mean? 50Gs is how much force was exerted on him when his car crashed. And usually roller coasters, when you go on a roller coaster, you're only dealing with about 12 or so Gs. Exactly. That 50 Gs is a lot. And we've seen instances where drivers were in those high impact crashes. They've had that much force put on them. I believe in 2021, when Max Verstappen won his first world title, him and Hamilton were going at it. They had a really bad wreck. And Verstappen faced a 50 or 51G crash. He ended up with a concussion. He said that after that crash in Silverstone, his vision for a few other races, his vision was blurry. And that's not okay to allow someone to drive with that. Solely because, A, that's a sign of concussion. He was concussed. B, how can you drive if you can't see properly? He ended up winning the world championship, but it goes to show how little they focus on concussion safety. And after the race, Carlos Sainz said that this was the type of crash that they were warning the FIA about with these new regulations, and the FIA just didn't listen. Since then, the FIA did put out a statement. I'm going to put it on the screen here so you can take a minute to read it. But analyzing that statement, they focus more on the shareholders rather than stakeholders, same thing. They focus more on them rather than the drivers and their safety. When it comes to driver safety also impacts fan safety. Because if you didn't watch the pre-race show that they did on Apple TV, which usually starts around an hour before the race, right? They showed that in the Porsche Carrera Cup, there was a really bad wreck where a Porsche went up onto another one, flipped, and went all around the barrier. It was terrifying to see. I can imagine seeing that in person. If you have a bad wreck like that, debris can hit fans. Debris, even the car if the car potentially flips over those barriers, that can impact fan safety. And when an F1 car is going that high of speed and they crash, that debris can also hit fans. And if that car somehow manages to flip over the barrier, that can also impact the fans. So the FIA primarily prioritizing stakeholders, I believe it's going to backfire on them. There were rumors going around that Carlos and Max Verstappen, they were going to strike Miami. They weren't going to race in Miami if they don't fix the regulations, if they don't prioritize driver safety, which, good for them. I would understand. Max Verstappen is already on the verge of retiring because of how bad these regulations are. I cannot name one driver who is happy with these. The only person I can really think who is happy with these new regulations is Toto Wolff. Solely because Mercedes nailed the regulations and they have a good car. However, I don't even think the drivers are happy with it because, once again, Kimi has struggled with starts. George has had some bad luck with his car. Lando Norris, he's not happy. He said after the race that it's not overtaking, it's not racing, it's yo-yoing. What he means by that is when he goes to overtake, for example, Lewis Hamilton, because that was their battle in the race. When he went to go overtake Lewis Hamilton, he used so much battery, he deployed so much battery that once he overtook him, he would just fall back. And honestly, he's right. That isn't racing. So many fans, so many creator friends of mine as well have shared that they're not looking forward to Miami. They don't want to actually sit down and watch it anymore. Luckily, they have a month off now because they canceled Bahrain and Jeddah, which they should have done in the first place. So hopefully this time gives the FIA time to actually review the regulations, see where they've gone wrong, and see if there's a way that they can fix them and give the teams time to fix them before Miami. Because this season could potentially be the death of the sport if no one wants to watch it. Okay, now that we got that little sad, dark kind of discussion out of the way, let's move on to something more positive. Let's talk about the good things that happened during the Japanese Grand Prix. So, the first two races, McLaren struggled. Oscar Piastri had not raced a single lap of a regular race. He raced in the sprint race, but he got points. We'll count that, but he didn't race in an actual Grand Prix setting. He was finally able to race, and boy, did he dominate. He got way ahead of everyone right off the start, and he ended up in second place. He got his first podium of the season in his first actual race start. So, very good for Sir Oscar Piastri. I don't know why I said sir. He's not a knight, but you know what? Good for him. Fernando Alonso, his partner had a child, and he's a dad now, so he missed FP1. Jack Crawford took over, and he made it back for FP2, which crazy. And he got his first race finish. He may have finished 18th, but it's a start for Aston Martin, apparently. I don't think Aston Martin finished a race this season yet, so seeing them at least finish a race, that very good for Aston Martin. It's a step in the right direction, you know. What other good things happened? Kimi Antonelli got his second hat trick of the season, a pole position in qualifying, race win, and fastest lap. That's the second of the season, so very good for Kimi. He is now the youngest world championship leader. As a George fan, I'm a little hurt, but we move nonetheless. I do want to say, even though George had some struggles this weekend, they added something to his rear suspension to try to make that better, and it ended up not working. It ended up giving the car so much oversteer. It was rough. He had a rough qualifying, but he still ended up in the top 5. He still ended up in P4, so very good for him. No, I don't know if this is necessarily good, but it's funny. There's a clip going around of Max Verstappen being overtaken by Pierre Gasly, And as he's overtaken, Max just kind of waves to him. That's something I do. I wave to people. I'm a chronic waver. If you know me, at sports games, like before games, especially in marching band, I would do this for fun. When we were down on the sidelines, I would always wave to the team that we're playing. So like we'd go down by halftime and we're on the other team's bench. I'd be, hi. Someone get me a propeller hat. I feel like I need a propeller hat because that's how I am. But that's what Max did to Pierre. A creator friend of mine, I believe it was Kenny on TikTok, said that this might be Pierre Gasly's revenge for like Max making fun of his hairline. So funny enough, that'd be funny. Before the race, Lando and his engineer were kind of like, Lando and one of his technicians kind of going back and forth. I think his technician was trying to push his car back into the grid spot, and he was like, from what I heard, he was just like staying on the brakes so it was harder to move, and then after he got in his spot, he was giggling. But yeah, also Max and Lando are friends again. Season so bad they became friends. So, but that's pretty much really I mean, like, aside from like fan interactions, Sogo, the fan who was brought on stage, he's like this kid. He was brought on stage in 2024, I believe. 2024 or not last year. Yeah, 2024. He was brought on stage because he had a shirt that was just like George doing the T-pose. So they did the T-pose on stage. It was so cute. He got to meet George again this year, and he said he's been learning English to actually like talk to him, and it was so sweet. The interaction, it made me cry. I cry at a lot of things that made me cry. And we also had the 3 kids who dress up as Max, Lando, and Charles. I don't think they got to meet Max, but they got to meet Lando, and I believe they got to meet Charles as well. The interaction with Lando was so sweet. Once again, had me crying because I cry at everything. And probably the best part about the Japanese Grand Prix this year was the creativity. There was a clip of a fan who, their hat, it was Ferrari's Macarena wing, which it flips. So it was just the wing flipping over and over again. These fans are so creative, and I love seeing it. That the Japanese Grand Prix is one of my favorite races of the year just because of how creative the fans are. I love seeing how like dedicated they are to making something that'll be recognizable for years and years. So that was pretty much it. I mean, it was a race of all time, but we had some good, we had a lot of bad, but I think it's time to move on to Barber, because the race in Barber was a crazy race. So coming right up, we'll be talking about the Children's of Alabama Grand Prix. Okay, we're going to try to cut this Barber recap a little short, but Barber was such a fantastic race. Barber Motorsports Park always creates good races. The atmosphere, the art, amazing. So Alex Palou bounced back from his rough past 2 weekends with Phoenix and crashing out in Phoenix, getting second in Arlington. He's back on the top podium. He's back on the top step. Alex Palou is just like that. He's just built different. Like Will Buxton says, he's the Spanish surgeon. Absolute phenomenal race from him. We saw some really good action between Graham Rahal and David Malukas. David Malukas fell into 4th, Graham Rahal in 3rd. Graham Rahal held on to that 3rd place with his life, his first podium in a few years. So very happy for Graham Rahal as well. Very good to see him on the podium. And Christian Lundgaard had a phenomenal race. He would have won if he did not have a botched pit stop. And what happened was the right rear tire was struggling, and it just didn't want to go on his car. So we had a very incredible race. That race could have gone any way, and if certain things didn't play out the way that they did, we would have had a completely different podium. And that is the joy of racing, is that little things can play big roles. So, like that botched pit stop, Christian Lundgaard would have still been in first. Christian Lundgaard would have won the race. Palou would have been in second. Graham Rahal in third. Unless Graham Rahal ran out of battery, and then it would have been David Malukas in third. So, absolutely phenomenal race in Barber. And in Martinsville, too. Martinsville was fantastic. I was watching that and MotoGP at the same time. So, very, very, very great racing that whole weekend. Denny Hamlin led most of the Martinsville race. There was a wreck between Carson Hocevar and Bubba Wallace, which I think we're going to see beef between them in the next race at Bristol, which that'll be an exciting race. But after that restart, Chase Elliott, his crew, they planned everything perfectly. Chase Elliott got his first victory at the place where he started his NASCAR career, so a very good tie-in story, full circle moment. Yeah, we've been getting a lot of good racing. MotoGP as well. MotoGP was a great race. Marco Bezzecchi. If you watch MotoGP, you know what I'm talking about. He won. I think he wrecked out in the sprint race. Marc Marquez, he was down in 14th after getting a penalty and ended up in 4th. So Marc Marquez, he's insane like that. He has won, I believe, 9 world championships. He knows how to race. He knows how to make those comebacks, and we could have seen like the most insane. If Marc Marquez would have won, that would have been the cherry on top for the weekend. That would have been the story that I would have started with. But Marco Bezzecchi, phenomenal race all around. Good to see him on the top step. He may win the world championship this season, so hopefully we might see a new contender. My friend Emily Talks Racing was at the MotoGP at Circuit of the Americas. She has more. But yeah, guys, we had to cut this episode a little short, just because I need time to edit, blah blah blah. Just because we have a big episode coming up and we start filming Monday. So please stay tuned for next week's episode. Since there's no racing this weekend, we will be doing a sort of Guess the Driver episode where a few of my creator friends and we'll have a few people in studio competing to win a driver's hat of their choice, guys. So stay tuned. Have a great week. Have a great weekend. This weekend is Easter. If you celebrate Easter, happy Easter. And yeah, I will see you all next time. Next time we'll be back in the studio with a very great and very engaging competition.